Okay, so we're going to do our next block in and start to define our petals. But before we do that, we're going to do our swatches of paint that we have, our paint colors that we have used here. So we will know what we used when it comes time to do our painting. So I'll start with the dark red for a flower. So I put it on my brush and I'm going to put it right here. And I'll use a paper towel. Actually, I'm just going to put it up here. Since I've already got paint on my brush, I know I'm going to use it here, so I might as well do that rather than wiping off all my paint. Now I can wipe off my paint, clean it up just a bit. Then I go to this middle value. See how I take my brush and I like this, and then I switch the other side and I do like this. This is how I do with every stroke that I make throughout a painting. And so then I'm going to put this right here, right next to it. And then I'll do the same over here. Now, something that I'm going to also do before I do the green, I'm going to get a totally clean brush. So if you're going in between like the red and the green, which would be a warm and a cool, remember complementary colors, this is the warm, this is cool, you want to switch out to a clean brush. Or if you're just using the same brush, that's okay. Take your brush, swipe it around in your Gamsol. Clean it really, really good. Then, before you dip into paint, I want you to use a paper towel and really, really dry that off. Not only are you cleaning the brush, but you're getting that mineral spirit out of these hair follicles. And we want to do that because, again, we don't at this stage want to get that Gamsol or mineral spirit into our paint. Remember, all it's going to do is take out our color. So we are only wanting to use a little bit of gel if we even want to need to thin paints at this stage, not the mineral spirit. So that's how I would clean my brush if I'm using the same one and I'm going in between these two paint colors. So now I'll do the green. I'm going to take my dark green and I'll put it right here. And wipe off my brush again with my paper towel. You don't have to put it in the Gamsol at this point to clean it totally, but I like to wipe it off if I'm going in between these values. So, because it's really easy to get this value darker if I just then, rather than cleaning it off, if I just had this full of dark and I went to this mid-tone, it's going to darken it up. So, and I don't want to do that. So now I'll use this color. So now we're going to, for this block in, we are going to be using the full spectrum of darks, midtones, and lights for both our flower and our background. So I need to mix those a darker dark. Remember we talked about this little deep dark in here. I need to mix this, and I need to go even a little bit darker on my green to get some distinction here, because this is almost pretty much black right along here. So I'm going to put my palette up here for you all to see me mixing these values, because we're going to be doing our darkest darks and also lights. I'm going to go up and down in value, up in value. So to get this very deep dark, I'm going to use this same mix of my alizarin crimson, which was the 50-50 alizarin crimson, and my quinacridone red. I'm going to get some more of that. I want a bigger pile of it. And wipe off my palette knife. Now I'm going to dip into this green. I'm going to take a little bit of my phthalo green, which would be Viridian for you guys. I'm going to take just a tip of it. Now I will tell you that phthalo green, I've talked about it, is much stronger than Viridian. Viridian is actually a weak, kind of a weakling green, but this phthalo is so bossy. So I'm not going to take as much as I would that you all need to do with your Viridian, but I'm going to take a touch of this phthalo green and I'm going to put it in this mix and see how much darker it is now. It's looking a little bit to the purple, and so what I want to do when I see that, I'm going to reach over, I'm going to reach back in, cleaned off my palette knife. I'm going to get some more of this alizarin, and again, it's because Viridian was just so strong, and some more of my quinacridone red, and put it in there. And the reason why I do that is because the interior of flowers are very warm, and we want to stay on the warm side. If this is a deep cool dark, it's going to kill the flower. Flowers, on the interior of a flower, that's where all the life is. That's where all the warmth is. So when you think of life, you think of warmth, think reds, deep oranges. That's what you want to stick with for the deepness, darkest parts of the interior of a flower. So now I want to go up in value. So I'm going to get a fresh pile here. So I've got plenty of this. So I'm going to go into my alizarin crimson. Remember, it was a 50-50 that we were working with. And actually at this stage you can even get more of the quinacridone red in it than the alizarin, just because the quinacridone red is a little bit lighter in value. But this is the mix that we have. And then I'm going to, remember, we reach up and we get some of the yellow ochre to calm this down. And now I'm going to do white, and I'm going to be doing more white because we're going up into a higher value than what we have over here with our mid-tone. See, I'm not being gentle with this paint, all right? Don't be afraid of your paint. Just get in there and push it around. Get it mixed good, and we want to get big piles of paint. Kind of bring this up and compare. I might put a little bit more white into it. I also want to talk a little bit about white. Using white, if we use too much of it, it really can make our colors chalky. White is the coolest color that you have on your palette. So, you know, it's going to lighten, but it's also we can risk it going chalky. So sometimes, even a lot of times, when we're mixing, after we put some white in it, we may have to reach over and put a little bit more color back into it. So say if I thought, oh, that's just too chalky, I might reach over, kind of take a little bit of this quinacridone over here, a little bit of this ochre, and then a little bit more white. And it's just because we're trying to make sure it just doesn't get so chalky that it's not an appealing tone. Okay. So with our greens, because this dark background is so dark, this is going to be, I think, the lightest that will go. But we can still go even darker here, here, and here. So I can even take some of this, pull it aside like that. And then I can take some alizarin crimson, this deep red. I'm going to take a little bit of that. Remember, we're mixing a complementary color. Red and green will lower the value of your other paint color. It's going to lower it down, so it's going to make it darker. But it's not a 50-50, remember, in terms of ratio of the two colors. Because we do not want a brown. We just want this deep, dark color. And see, that essentially to me looks almost black, and it pretty much matches what I'm seeing here in the very deepest parts of our background. So take this down. I'm going to put my board back up. So I've already established essentially what I did here for my first pass. I have it over here except for my background. We're not going to worry about the background right at this minute. So this is the pass in which we start using all of our values in our warms and and for your flower and also for our background. But this is also where we start defining our petals, and we define our petals with our darks and our lights. So I will take my brush, put just a little bit of gel back and forth. And I'm going to go back. I'm going to look at my flower here. I'm going to redefine these values that I've already got. Remember, we talked about it being a donut. So now we're going to kind of define our donut. So maybe it will look more like a flower than a donut. So I'm going to go back into my dark red, not my darkest dark, but this red right here. I'm looking at it. And now I can take my brush and I say, well, I'm going to start here. It doesn't matter where you start. Where you start is your choice. So I'm looking at this petal right here. And I'm just bringing it, see how I'm just dragging it over where this midtone is. And I know that when I do my background, I will be able to define my flower, the petals of my flower, so I'm not particularly worried about that at this point. So I'm coming right up here. Just take the side of my brush. I'm just going to drag it up like this. And here. See this outside petal? Right here is what I'm looking at. So now I think I'll go back. I know it's going to come like this. And what's interesting about painting, every pass that we do, every stage of our block in, we can see more of our subject. You know, it's just what our brains do. Our brain will start to see and to see all of these things that maybe we didn't see them the first time. That's just the way it works. Looking up over here, bring this. And the other thing is that as we are seeing more, we're defining our drawing. So I am always drawing. I am drawing up until the point that my painting is completed. Everything that I do is defining and redefining my drawing. So I take marks and I just bring them back and forth with our strokes. So now I'm going to go back in to my dark, this little rectangle that I've got going here in the middle. Go back into that. Again, I'm just looking. And I want you all, I would say for these first 3 block ends, we have, mind you, 4. I would say for your 3 block ends, I want you to look at your subject more than you're looking at your painting. I want you to look at this. That's what I do. I look, I put in a stroke, and then I load my brush up again, and I look right back at that again. And I follow where I was. Well, I was right there, right here, and here, and then like that. So I really am spending more time looking at my drawing than I am at my painting. At this really first 3 stages. You know, when you've got everything in and you're doing that final fourth and really bringing your painting up to the very end, then it's more about your painting than it is about your subject or what's in front of you. At this point, it's what's in front of you. So now I'm going to take, I'm looking at all of these petals and I'm thinking, well, how do I make that? Well, all you have to do is you can take your brush and say, I'm going to look at this right here. And I'm going to just bring this in. And I'm going to then come up here and I see this petal going this direction. And so I'm just going to bring it up here. It might look a little messy at this point, but that's okay. That's the way it is. It's really supposed to look messy. So let's see, we've got this petal that I sort of was working on here. And I can bring it up like that. So now I'm going to go back with my midtone, use some of that to kind of start to define it more. I'm going to start right back over in this edge and I'm going to take some of that midtone and pull it down. Go over here. Looking at this, I can bring this up here and here, and then possibly up here. So I'm going to, let's see, this along here, there we go. And then I'm going to go right back to, this is very dark right here. So I'm going to go right up along here. Just like that. And keep in mind that this is a back and forth. You are not going to get your petals exactly where you want them at this stage. Not by any means. It really is a back and forth. And with a peony too, I want to talk about brush strokes. These petals are growing up like this. So if we take our brush and we can pull it down like that. Up, we pull it the direction that the petal is growing. Wiping off my brush. I'm going to go back into my dark. I'm going to define this a little bit more here. Take my brush and just kind of drag it so I see a little bit of that petal going over. And then this is darker right here. Just pull it in, just like that. Now, mind you, these are small little studies. So we're working with a small canvas, if you will. So, you know, we don't have as much room to work with as if, you know, when we're going to be working on our larger final pieces. So just have to keep that in mind. I'm going to take this and pull it just like that. And then I'm going to redefine this a little bit more here, this petal. Pull it around. And if I felt like I want to bring some of this dark back in, I can do that. I can just go back and forth, back and forth. The other thing, I just, again, squint. What is the most important thing about painting? It's the darks, the lights, it's the values. That is what makes a painting. Now I'm going to move up into a lighter tone. This light, warm tone that we have for a flower. So I'm going to load my brush up with it. And just right here, when I squint, I'm squinting again, this all along here is your lightest. So this is where I'm going to go. I'm just going to bring it around. I use my fingers a lot. Right up here. And then I will just pull it down. I'm putting this on the tips. You know, flower petals are not perfect shapes. It's nature, and that's what makes them beautiful, is that they're not perfect. We don't want them to be. So keep that in mind. You know, your painting doesn't have to be perfect, because flowers are not perfect. It's more interesting for them to be imperfect. You see more actually beauty in them. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. And all I need to do is just pull it up here and here. I got it way too small. So I'm going to make that bigger. And then I see a little bit, maybe right here. I'm just barely touching that. So the other thing I also want to talk about is photographs versus life. So what I tell my students is that photographs lie. They are made to really show everything. And in real life, we're not seeing everything. We're not seeing all the details, which is why we squint. But also, photographs are very bright and oftentimes much lighter than what things are in reality. So the dark center of this flower will not have as many lights as we see. And if we make this too light in the center, it's not going to look real. So we want to keep that in mind. This is very dark. The center is very dark. So except for a few strokes, we're going to keep it dark. And then the other thing that I like to do a lot of is to just kind of blur out the lines between petals. Bring these together. Again, that's also much more appealing. I'm going to rinse out my brush because I do want to go back to my midtone. See how I pulled this down? So it's hard to see that midtone any longer. I wiped off my brush. I'm going to go back to my midtone and I'm just going to get that reestablished. And I might even pull it a little bit, some of it, into my light. Just kind of getting it just kind of back and forth. And what's happening is that these are all kind of blending and bringing them together. Now the other thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to take that mid-tone and all of these that we're seeing, these little petals in there, I'm just going to kind of put just some shapes of my mid-tone in the center. I really at this point don't care what they look like per se. But I'm just trying to put a little bit of that in there. Wipe off my brush, go back to my dark, reestablish dark. Everything is back and forth, back and forth. This is an opportunity here to kind of drag my brush around, push it, and redefine that petal. Into this dark right here. Drag my brush around like that. Push the paint. You can kind of take your brush and just push it in, drag it around. You can pull some of this in like this, so it's kind of, you get a transition of it going down. Do the same here. Push it and push it. What I'm doing when I'm pushing it, I'm making this kind of these beautiful scallops around our flower. Pulling my brush up right here. Again, pulling this around. Kind of getting these scallops in. Take some of my dark again, just where I see some corners of dark here in the middle. I'll bring that in right here, here. And I might, remember we've got a lot of opportunity to work all of this out, so let's not get terribly carried away at this point. And then I'm going to go into the darkest right here. And I'm going to take just where I see this in the center, that's super dark, I'm going to put some of that in. I feel like it's a little too dark. So I'll take my dark and mix it into that. Let's not get it that dark. This is when it's such a good opportunity. This is when we do our studies, this helps us determine what our mixes are going to be. So by doing this, I can look at it and say, you know what, that's too dark. I don't want to go with that. So I can take a paper towel, kind of pull that out, wipe off my brush, and I just lightened it up a bit by just reaching into my dark paint here and putting it into my darkest dark. So I'm just putting it in the little spots where I see the very darkest parts. And then I can go back and even put some of that mid-tone back in if I so choose, to kind of get a little bit of that reestablished. So just back and forth, back and forth. So I know there's things on here that I'm going to define as I move on. Some of my petals, I'm not crazy about their shapes, but at this point I will go on and do my background. And it's just the same thing that we did over here. Kind of define these petals a little bit more with our negative shape. See how I took my brush and just kind of cut it in right there? Define that a little bit better. Just drag it around. Get some really dark along here, on here. This is really the darkest dark of my background color. And then I know this is going to be lighter here, some lights here. One more thing I do want to do here is this dark round right here in this, how this petal separates. So I'm going to get my darkest dark, bring that around, just drag it down. That's about really all that I see with that. So this is where I want to be at this stage with this block in. So I've established my darkest dark, my midtones, my lights, in my flower, and in my background.